nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to a Tuesday edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. I'm your host, Kiyan Sobhani, and I am joined tonight by Sam Sharpe, our rare cameo. It's been way too long since we've had Sam on, and we're recording this maybe 40 minutes or so after Real Madrid squeaked by Cacareño in the Copa del Rey round of 32, and just an absolutely devastating night for Cacareño, who could not do what 300 million Segunda Federación teams before them have done, and that is eliminate Real Madrid in the round of 32. Just a disaster for them, as they were favored to go through in this game. And Real Madrid squeaked by through a Rodrygo Golazo, scraped by a horrendous field, and a game that I frankly do not want to talk about ever in my life again. And I'm not sure even how much we can drag out from this. So let me just start off by saying, Sam Sharpe, welcome to the show, man. How you been? It's been way too long.
Yeah, very good, thank you. It would have been shorter, but my my appendix burst just before the live show a few months back. So I'm an appendix down, but yeah.
You're taking it way back. That was our London podcast back in February of 2022.
Yes, and I was almost on the way. I picked Chris up and I was with him. And we went for lunch, and I thought there's something not right here, and I had to head all the way back down home because it was done. It exploded or burst or whatever it does.
Yeah, appendix bursting is, I've not experienced it, but both my mother and my sister went through that, and I do not wish seeing the pain on their face. Do not wish that on anyone. So I'm glad that's long gone for you now, and it's over. And I don't remember, when was the last time you were on the podcast?
Oh, it was way before that, I tell you. It could even be over a year. Where were we?
Unacceptable, man. Unacceptable.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're actually watching every single Real Madrid game because you're writing about it for the site.
Yeah.
Just throw on, just get on the mic afterwards, man.
Yeah, I'll have to try to much more. Yeah, for sure.
So I like to have you on for these early Copa del Rey games / preseason games if I can, in part because you're like the OG Castilla guy. Before Twitter accounts were even getting big, you amassed like almost 15,000 followers like right off the bat covering Castilla. You were one of, if not the only guy covering Castilla full-time in English on Twitter. You rose to fame, and you obviously are part of the Castilla Corner crew on the Managing Madrid Podcast. You've covered the team. You're a fan. You're literally a Castilla fan, and you have been for a long time. And games like this, you would hope get minutes for the Castilla guys. Unfortunately, we didn't really get that today, and I'm kind of disappointed. Although Alvaro came in and Sergio Arribas came in. Alvaro, I thought, looked pretty decent in his cameo. Although, what can you take away from that? It was minimal. And Arribas didn't play enough. He'd have like maybe 7 touches or less, and that's it. No other minutes. Were you disappointed with that aspect of this?
I think you can't be, simply because with this new structure, teams like any third division team you've seen, it can upset one of the big boys. And that's always made it tough for managers to now bring in those youth players. Because obviously the old structure, you had the double-sided legs where you'd go home, then you'd go away. And at least one of those games would be flooded with Castilla players to the point where there would be 6-7 on the pitch at one point. And that just isn't going to happen anymore. But in the past years, we haven't seen any. So to see 2, and I think there was about 6 on the bench, is actually quite a positive. I think it looks like if you're a Castilla player now, there is a window into that first team in these early cup games. They did scrape the win. They didn't really ever look in danger. I wouldn't say they played well, because they didn't. And I think the home team played really well as well. I thought they did really well, and they showcased themselves for a 4th-tier side. But I think it's promising if you're a young player that you will get minutes in these early cut rounds if the tie's right.
I guess my counter to that is, and I see that argument, I see the fact that, people will say, well, look at Real Madrid's track record in the Copa del Rey. We can't risk it. We can't play the kids.
Yeah.
And I guess my rebuttal to that is like, we're playing Hazard instead. We're playing like why do we have to develop Hazard over Arribas in a situation like this? And why has Hazard earned the trust more than Arribas? Like I kind of get the idea, like, okay, you have to play these guys like sometimes, But Odriozola is another one. Like Odriozola is not going to be a Real Madrid player in the future. Like there's no real invested interest in developing him. So that's one side of the coin. The other side, like I guess I'm also, some people really wanted like Marvel to play in this game, and that one is a little bit more difficult for me to see because we actually have defenders who are not playing much this season who are actually good and are part of the team. Like I'm happy for Vallejo to get more minutes in this game in a game like this, etc. But though, I guess the other side of the coin is we've seen in the past these games in the Copa del Rey. If you put first team players in it, they're just not up for it. It's hard for them to get motivated for games like this. Meanwhile, you're playing a team that's playing the biggest game of their lives. And I just think if we're going to just bring in hunger into this, I think the Castilla guys are going to be super hungry to play like this. And the other thing is, Sam, this is the level that Arribas and Co actually play at, like game in, game out, right? These are the teams they'll play against.
It's higher now, isn't it? Yeah, so it's because of the restructure. This is probably the lowest ranked side I've seen Real Madrid play a competitive game against. They're fourth tier now, so they're not Segunda or Segunda B as it used to be known. Castilla in the third tier, and flying in the third tier. So it's a level above or below, in fact, the Castilla boys now. So I think that quality or that drop in quality is why it gets so dry on the pitch at times, because in that first half, in that second half especially, actually, Rodrygo Goes, Lucas Vazquez, they were making these runs and they were caught offside time and time again. And I was wondering why it was, because it's not like the home side's defence were playing any tricks and trying to drop back or catch them offside. But I think it's literally just that drop in quality. So those quick runs, they're just not going to get tracked at all. And they ended up looking really far offside, and it looked almost incompetent at times. But I think that drop in quality really, it does no good to a player like, as you say, Eden Hazard, who's not going to exactly get back into the rotation by a good performance against a fourth division outfit. Whereas a player like Sergio Arribas or any of these Castilla players, they are going to gain a lot from making their debuts and playing alongside rotational first team players. So yeah, you are right massively.
Well, the offside thing is interesting, and you can take it as far back as the Lucas Vazquez disallowed goal. First of all, I'd have to watch it again, and I won't. I'm not going to watch it again. But that Lucas Vazquez, I don't even know how he ended up in that position from the right back slot. He was playing as a striker for that sequence. And it wasn't like, I don't think it was like just a random sequence where things were just all out of place. It was just a regular slow build-up sequence. Yeah, I think maybe, I don't like, the other thing is like in a game like this, there's no VAR. So, like there was one breakaway that Rodrygo had in the second half, which looked onside. I think even based on the replay, they didn't really show it much, but everyone seemed to think it was onside, and they obviously they don't let the play go on. They just have to make it call like the medieval days where the lines has to put it up without a VAR. Almost forgot what that looked like, but yeah, I mean, there was space behind their defensive line. I will say this didn't seem like the it was tight. Obviously, it was a 1-0 victory that wasn't too comfortable, but it wasn't like some of the past exits in the Copa del Rey or even like narrow victories where we get like outplayed massively. It wasn't like that quite. So at least there's like baby steps progress. I don't know if you saw Ancelotti's quotes after the game, but he was just like, yeah, it looked like it was not easy, and but our defense played well and we limited the chances, and we're happy about that. Did you see his quote about the pitch?
No. What did he say?
It's a great quote, and I agree with him. He says, quote, I'm just loading here. He says, quote, playing on a pitch like this isn't football, it's another sport, end quote. Seemed pretty bad, right? I mean, because there were definitely moments in this game where you're like, why is he not passing it to that open player or that? And I feel like the pitch definitely had to have factored into their minds and their play.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many struggles and factors in a game like this that can just contribute towards kind of this rugged performance against a team that you'd expect them to be 5, 6, 7, 8 plus goals up against quite quickly. So it is always interesting. I like the spectacle of it. Obviously, I don't think it's easy playing in a stadium like that was absolutely packed, and they're not big stands, and you can probably hear all the chants and all the hostility towards you. There's another factor, and I'm sure that plays massive mind games for both teams, because one team's obviously being brought up and dragged across by the home side, whilst the other are just being dragged into the mud, the very, very muddy pitch. To play football on that, again, in that hostile atmosphere, it's not going to be easy to play those passes. And some Real Madrid players, I think they'll hesitate to play that quick pass when they know it's just going to get caught up or take a bobble in the mud. And that decision can go wrong. So you are right. I think there's so many factors that just contribute to them playing, not half-heartedly, but more slowly than they would against, obviously, a more quality outfit.
In games like this, Sam, like I feel silly talking about tactics and what went wrong. And like, again, no one will revisit this game. No one will care what we say in the post-game podcast. But so I don't really want to necessarily focus on like, oh, they should have done this. They should have, played this way through the press, or it was disjointed structurally. No one cares. But I suppose like I also don't like singling anyone for being bad in a game like this. But I do want to flip it and say maybe like, let's talk about some of the stuff that was good. And I'm curious to know who stood out to you, Sam, in this game.
That's a really hard question, because there were no absolute standouts on that pitch. In fact, from what I saw, there are some players, as you say, not just refraining from doing certain things, but just doing them wrong because either the pitch or the scenario was in their head so much that they would just hoof the ball away and they'd miss kick it and it would go out. I remember seeing Rodrygo just slap one out in the way that you would not normally see him do. And then defensively, players switching off was, and this is a massive lesson to everyone, because I think every single professional footballer player needs to be respected. But there was a player that didn't even start. I think he's called Garchi. And I looked him up. He's 25, because there was an ex-Castilla player with the same name. And I thought it was the same one for a second. It wasn't. This guy's 25, 26. And he's like chopped Fede Valverde in half. And then he's nutmegged Camavinga. And he's towards goal. I think he's then been tackled not long ago. But just switching off like that and almost expecting them to do something inferior or predictable, it causes problems. So standouts, I thought Lucas Vázquez was okay. The Castilla players didn't really shine. Obviously, Rivas didn't have many minutes at the end. As you say, you just kind of look at a game like this where it is so mediocre. You look at the people who fall below that level, because they're the ones who stand out more than anything, I think.
I guess the standout to me was Rodrygo.
Yeah, it'd have to be. I agree with you. The goal was good. I really like the goal, actually. It was a nice touch inside, and the finish as lovely as you can get. He was running at again, not his strongest game, and there was plenty of offside occasions that frustrated me at one point. I couldn't work out why they were happening. But I suppose you're right, yeah.
I mean, like, the goal was awesome. And again, like, when I say standout, I don't mean anybody was, Di Stefano today. I just mean that there were at least players who looked like they were trying to produce. You compare.
Go on.
Well, just that you compare Rodrygo, for example, to Hazard, and even before Rodrygo's goal, there was intent to try to break lines, to carry the ball. A lot of like Rodrygo's dribbling attempts, he actually was able to progress the ball a little bit and get into some good areas, but it was also a little bit of luck and awkwardness to his dribbles, and you could tell it was because of the pitch. But at least he had intent, and the goal was great. Whereas, Asensio was at least trying a little bit too in the first half. But Rodrygo, I guess, was the standout to me. And I don't know, everyone might have their own standout. Like you can throw Lunin in here, but he didn't have any crazy saves. He was just, I guess, solid. His distribution was pretty good too. Nacho was fine. I think some of like the defensive performances were good. The midfield wasn't, like, Camavinga struggled getting a foothold of the ball. Even some of those 50-50 challenges, he wasn't going in and making an impact. And maybe it was because he was scared of getting injured. And I honestly don't blame him if that's the case. Ceballos, I think in a game like this actually does make sense a little bit because he's got that little bit of edge to him. He was okay. I just I don't really know what to extract from this. From an analysis standpoint, it's really hard. These games are the hardest for me to look at.
I mean, you'd think a player like Dani Ceballos would just dominate this kind of game where the home side are going to get excited and they are going to over-attack. And it did happen. And the spacing available on the counter at times was incredible. And that's where the goal came from, effectively. It was a great pass by Asensio into Ceballos, but you thought they would be doing that all day long. And it just didn't happen. So it is difficult to really analyse deeply.
There's a piece coming up by Sam Leverage, our other Sam. And I'm getting a sneak peek at it, and I just wanted to spoil some numbers that he's going to publish in more detail on Managing Madrid later tonight, probably by the time you guys are listening to this podcast. Stat number 1, Real Madrid have won despite having fewer shots than their opponent for the first time since El Clasico. So there's one for you. 9-7, they were outshot. Again, there wasn't that many clear-cut chances, I don't think.
Exactly, yeah. I wouldn't have predicted there was 9 chances. If I look back at that game, I can't remember 9 clear-cut chances or even any chances from the home side. So there was one that Lunin saves at one point that he did well to keep out. But other than that, even the chances weren't of particular quality today. So, yeah.
The other two, one is that Dani Ceballos had the most duels won of any player. That's 7. Here's one that's wild, and I'll just ask you to guess it. If you had to guess how many days it's been since Alvaro Odriozola last appeared for Real Madrid, what's your guess?
I've watched the first team this season. I haven't seen his name, so I would have to say
it's definitely not this season.
378 days.
So you're guessing just over a year?
Over a year. I'd say that's about a season and a half. Yeah, maybe that's harsh, actually, but 378 days, I'm going to guess.
It's not harsh. It's too kind. 591 days.
Oh, gosh. Wow.
So this goes back to my point. I mean, it's staggering. It's crazy. It was a 2-1 win over Villarreal in May of 2021.
Wow.
In the last day of the league season when there was nothing to play for. I guess my point going back to the beginning is that this guy's not going to be a Real Madrid player.
No.
Quite frankly, I'm not even sure I understand why we even recalled him from Fiorentina. They should have just let him stay there. It was a good fit for him. I don't see why.
It's just 100%. It seemed like options at the time, but with Vázquez filling in that position, yeah, it didn't make that much sense. Yeah.
You wrote the immediate reaction for the site. What did you touch on that we missed? Anything?
Again, just this kind of reawakening for opportunities for these young players. I think that they will all be happy with that, especially the ones that made the bench, because they did make the bench in bulk. I guess squad rotation, as much as you question it, with certain players, and correctly so, it's always important and good to see. And I'm sure the home crowd would have wanted to see a big name like Eden Hazard step on the pitch. And obviously the spectacle of it. I mean, I think I wrote in the first blurb that a lot of these actually do turn out to be magical, where you get these young players coming in and performing fantastic and everyone in awe of them and plenty of goals. But they do go either way, where you also have these kind of rugged matches where you've really got to play your way to get a small scoring result. So yeah, this time on this occasion it wasn't to be, but I do enjoy these spectacles, and I always have.
Well, God bless you, Sam, and God bless everyone for sitting through this one, including the first 20 minutes or so. Yeah, come on in. First 20 minutes or so where ESPN's feed just cut out and no one in North America could literally legally watch it. Anyways, I scheduled 20 minutes for this podcast, and my 2-year-old is in. He's causing all kinds of chaos. He's trying to eat leftover edamame skins that I have in a bowl here, and he also, that door stopper thing, I don't know what it's called, the door stopper that's kind of like a spring.
Yeah.
He was flicking that like a million times while you were talking. I had to put the podcast on mute. So that's a Tuesday night for me, and I'm about done. And what time is this? Like what? Almost. Oh, it's like 11 p.m. in UK, right?
11 p.m. is not actually too bad. We've done this at worst times. I remember it. So it's not too bad for me.
well, you and I have to have a proper catch-up session, but, back then you were living a bachelor life, and I never felt bad about throwing you in there at 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
Too right, yeah. Too right. Yeah, I miss it.
We're due, man. We're due for a catch-up session, and, off air, I'm going to try to convince you to come to Liverpool for that game in February.
We'll try my hardest, because you will love that stadium, and I would love to experience it with you.
Absolutely.
I think the last time I was there, the players, they park right outside and they walk in, because it's not closed off like many modern stadiums. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I'm excited. All right, man. It was a pleasure. Thanks for giving me some time here. We'll catch up soon. Take care, buddy.
Of course.
Thanks for listening. And before we wrap it up here, we wanted to give a quick shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid, and specifically to our $10 plus patrons, because if you pledge $10 or more per month, you not only get access to everything and not only get guaranteed responses to your questions, you also get a specific shout out at the podcast. So shout out to our $10 plus patrons as follows: Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Will Sousa, Wei Paring, Tobias Arroyo Botcher, Talab Salhab, Tahmid Kalam, Sushank Damala, Sujai Wani, Sumanchu Singh, Sheikh Hatiri, Shamil, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solrosano, Samuel Justin, Samar Z, Said Mahad, Sai Mohan, Sasi Kumar, Rodrygo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Odayafadi, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo, Nicholas Moeller, Nick Ribeiro, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Matthew Atkins, Martin Ridman, Magnus Lext, Logan Stahl, Leon Savernakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jason Fitz, Ian Marley, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Rantakiro, Frederick Sunros, Faisal Hamdan, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Khan P, Christian Toft, Krishna Costa, Charles Williams, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Ashik Bashar, Arnab Mukherjee, Arman Gashi, Armando L, Anirudh Singh, Ananya Kumar, Azaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalukovic, Adam Dorsey, Varun, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. We love you guys so much. Thank you so much for your support. Thanks for being a part of this family. And Hala Madrid.